So if I can go back to Mr. Rademacher, as I mentioned this morning in the press is this report, and I talked about viewing this sanctions relief as a signing bonus, basically. What are they doing with the relief they already have? And the fact that the Iranian regime is so engaged right now with the anticipation of getting the relief. The remarks by one of the ministers that, they control 4 Arab capitals today, and he was speaking of Yemen as well as other countries that have fallen under the sway of the Quds forces. The Quds forces is very active, and this week, according to Western intelligence, Iran's Revolutionary Guards, during the past few months, have transferred tens of millions of dollars to Hamas's brigades. Intelligence reports show that the funds have been transferred on the direct order of the commander of the Revolutionary Guard's elite Quds force, who also dedicated an annual budget to finance Hamas's military operations. The funds, according to the intelligence report, are being used primarily to help Hamas rebuild the network of tunnels that were destroyed. And apart from using Iranian aid to rebuild the tunnel network, the brigades are also replenishing their depleted stocks of medium-range missiles, according to officials. So the consequences of this negotiation, this olive branch, to put it in the words of the administration, that's being extended, is not an Iran that is changing its behavior. If we read anything from attitude, you take a look, and I'm going to quote Dennis Ross this week from something he wrote. The more the Supreme Leader makes specific points about the content and purposes of the negotiations in public, the more his comments are likely to tie the hands of his negotiators. I think his point is that, that's what's happened so far. The Supreme Leader insisted in public that Iran have enrichment. And what happened? They got enrichment. That they not dismantle the facilities, which I thought was part of the original plan. He succeeded. That they be allowed to continue R&D. So they succeeded. That they have an industrial-sized program. On all of these points, U.S. negotiators conceded. So when the Supreme Leader talks, whether it's on negation positions in terms of the agreement, or it's on the position of death to America, a chant that he still leads every week, apparently people listen. And I wanted to ask your opinion and the other panelists' opinion on that point.
Mr. Chairman, I certainly have to agree with you that if you look at the declared red lines on our side and on the Iranian side at the outset of these negotiations, and you look at what appears to be emerging as the final agreement is pretty much consistent with the Iranian red lines and bears little relationship to the red lines that were declared on our side going in. So what that tells you is that during the course of the negotiations on issue after issue, the Iranians prevailed and we backed down. And regrettably, we still don't have a final deal. And I mean, you've watched the spectacle of the dueling fact sheets, of the U.S. fact sheet and the Iranian fact sheet, and the Iranians saying that the U.S. fact sheet is all wrong, and the Supreme Leader taking issue with some of the details. So I think, the testimony we're presenting today is based on what we understand, and most of us are relying on the U.S. fact sheet. But they've from the outset, both sides have said in this negotiation, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So I think it's a fair statement that everything remains subject to negotiation, and I'm not sure we've seen the last of the retreats on our side in the negotiations, regrettably. You asked about what is Iran doing with the funds, and I mean, you're referring to sort of they're getting it's around $4 or $5 billion a month now as sort of a down payment on this much larger amount of money that's it's Iranian money, but it's in foreign bank accounts, and due to U.S. sanctions that Congress enacted, the so-called Menendez-Kirk sanctions, the Iranians are not able to spend that money. They're not able to bring it back to Iran. They're able to spend it in India or Japan or China. But anyway, what we know is that as part of this deal, they will be able to bring that money home. there are no restrictions on what they do with that money. That's just not part of the deal. And what they've
it's
been doing
fungible.
with the down payments gives an indication what they'll do with the much larger sums that are coming in the future.
And Mr. Albright, you had a point you wanted to make.
Yeah, I want to make a point. I think I want to emphasize that the limits for the first 10 years, I mean, in a negotiation that's difficult aren't that bad. I mean, it's really, there's questions, real questions after that 10-year about what's going on. But I think that it should be recognized that the Iranians had to give a lot in that 10-year period. And again, I have disappointments with Fordow, with centrifuge R&D, but centrifuge R&D in that 10-year period is pretty severely limited. I would have liked it not to happen on particularly the advanced ones called the IR-6 and the IR-8. But nonetheless, those limitations are in place. I also think that where Iran has been very tough is on the verification issues, and that's where I think the real holes in this deal can show up that are going to affect what happens in the first 10 years.
Thank you, Mr. Albright. Mr. Engel.